Scotland, autumn 1894. The Highlands were already turning cold when the first child disappeared. In a small mountain village hidden deep inside a narrow glen, people believed they understood the dangers of the land. The mist could swallow you whole. The cliffs could break a careless step. The forests could confuse even the men who had walked them their entire lives. So when the boy vanished, everyone assumed the mountain had simply claimed another life. But the mountain wasn't responsible. Something else was. The villagers began whispering an old name, a name their grandparents had used to frighten children away from caves and cliff edges. Black Annis, a creature said to live in the dark places of the mountains. A hag with skin like a corpse and claws strong enough to carve stone. A thing that hunted when the autumn fog rolled down from the peaks. For generations, no one believed the story was real, until the scratches appeared. Deep gouges cut into the limestone of the black crag above the village. Fresh marks, as if something with iron claws had been climbing in and out of the caves. 6 men decided to climb the mountain and find the truth. Only 2 came back, and what they brought down with them was not proof. It was a warning. So before we begin, if you enjoy dark folklore and true horror stories like this one, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because tonight's story isn't just about a legend. It's about the moment a legend stopped being a story and became something real. My name is Angus MacLeod. In 1894, I was 28 years old and had spent nearly half my life tending sheep in the Highlands. It was hard work, the kind that twisted your hands and carved lines into your face before your time. But I preferred it to the city. I had grown up in Glasgow after my father died in the shipyards, and I never liked the noise or the crowds. The mountains were different. Up there, the air was clean. The land was quiet, sometimes too quiet. The village where I lived was called Folklore. It sat between 2 ridges, tucked into a glen so narrow that sunlight barely touched the ground in winter. There were perhaps 40 people living there. Stone cottages, a tiny kirk that doubled as a school, 1 store, 1 tavern. Everyone knew each other. Everyone trusted each other. And nothing ever happened there until Robbie Campbell vanished. He was 8 years old, a loud little boy with red hair and a grin, missing 2 front teeth. Always running around the farms, always asking questions. The last anyone saw of him, he was heading into the woods to check rabbit snares. When night came and he hadn't returned, his parents thought he'd gotten lost in the fog. It happens sometimes. His father took a lantern and went looking. He found the snares exactly where the boy had left them, untouched, but Robbie wasn't there. By the next morning, the entire village was searching the forest. I went with Duck and Kerr. If anyone could track a missing child through those mountains, it was Duncan. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes and a reputation that stretched across 3 glens. We searched the eastern slopes until late afternoon. That's when we found the boy's cap. It was lying in the grass near the base of the black crag. Just a small wool cap sitting in the bracken. There was no blood, no thorn clothing, and no footprints. Duncan studied the ground for a long time. Finally, he stood up and looked at me. "There should be tracks," he said. The soil was soft from rain. If Robbie had walked away, we would have seen it. If something had carried him away, we would have seen that too. But there was nothing, not a single sign, except the cap. When we returned to the village, Duncan pulled me aside. "I saw something near the caves," he said quietly. "What kind of something?" "Scratches," he answered. He told me they were carved into the rock near the cave entrance, deep enough to cut through limestone. I asked what could make marks like that. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said something I never expected to hear from a man like Duncan Kerr. My grandmother used to tell stories about a creature that lived in those caves. I knew the story before he even said the name. Black Annis, a monstrous woman who hunted children and dragged them into the mountains. I laughed at the time, but Duncan didn't. Those scratches are fresh, he said. 3 days passed. No one found Robbie, and then another child disappeared. Margaret Murray. She was 10 years old and lived just down the path from my cottage. Her father said she had been gathering firewood when her singing suddenly stopped. When he reached the clearing, the sticks she'd been carrying were scattered across the ground, as if she had dropped them and run. But there were no footprints leading away. That night, every man in the village gathered inside the Boar's Head Tavern. The fire burned low, while Finley Ross poured whiskey with trembling hands. Finley was the oldest man in the village, and he had lived there longer than anyone else. My grandfather told me about this, he said. In 1812, 3 children vanished the same way. A few men shifted uneasily. Finley continued. They searched the caves on the Black Crag. He paused. 20 men went inside. And how many came out? Someone asked. Finley stared into his glass. 12. According to the story, the survivors refused to speak about what they had seen. But one of them eventually broke his silence. He whispered only one thing. She's real. Black Annis is real. And she gets hungry when autumn comes. The room fell silent. After a while, Duncan Kerr stood up. I'm going to those caves in the morning, he said. I'll bring rope, lamps, and rifles. He looked around the room. Anyone who wants to stop me can say so now. No one did. I don't know why I volunteered. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was fear. But I thought about Robbie's cap lying in the grass, and Margaret's scattered firewood. I'll come, I said. By dawn, there were 6 of us. Duncan Kerr, myself, Finley Ross, Thomas Grant, and 2 brothers who worked the quarry, Ian and Malcolm Scott. We climbed the mountain through thick fog. The higher we went, the quieter the world became. Halfway up the slope, Duncan suddenly stopped. He pointed to the ground, for deep gouges had been carved into the soil. Each mark was as wide as a thumb. Claw marks. They appeared in groups like footsteps. Something had walked through there on 2 legs. Duncan touched the edges of the marks. Still damp. Fresh. We followed them the rest of the way to the cave. The entrance sat high on the rock face, and the stone around it was covered in scratches. Thousands of them. Some old, some newly carved, as if something had spent years clawing its way in and out of the mountain. When we stepped inside, the smell nearly knocked us over. Rotting meat. Death. The cave opened into a wide chamber. Our boots crunched against the ground. Thomas lowered his lantern, and then he whispered something that made my stomach turn. Bones. The entire cave floor was covered with them. Tiny bones. Children's bones. Finger bones. Ribs. Small skulls staring up into the darkness. Then we heard breathing. Slow. Vet. Deep inside the cave. And beneath it, a clicking sound. Claws tapping against stone. Duncan whispered one sentence. She's here. The breathing stopped. Something began moving toward us. Click, click, click. Thomas raised his rifle. Bring the lamps closer, he said. I want to see it. Then the creature stepped into the light. It might once have been a woman, but now it was something else entirely. 8 feet tall, arms hanging nearly to the ground, skin the color of a corpse, and hands ending in long black claws. Its mouth opened wide enough to show rows of jagged teeth. But the worst part was the eyes. They were human, hungry, ancient, Mel. Black Anna screamed. The rifle fired. The bullet struck her chest. She didn't fall. Instead, she rushed forward on all fours like a monstrous spider. Ian Scott barely had time to react before her claws tore open his chest. His brother Malcolm attacked in fury, swinging his hammer again and again. The creature staggered, then dragged him into the darkness. We heard Malcolm screaming, then silence. We dragged Ian toward the cave entrance, but the creature returned. Finley tried to fight her. She slit his throat in a single strike. Thomas fired again. For a moment, the monster stopped and looked at us. And then she spoke. The words were broken and rough. Meaning, the children are mine, given to the mountain, given to the dark. Duncan pushed me toward the rope. Get him down the mountain, he said. I climbed with Ian on my shoulder. Thomas followed behind me. Then Duncan cut the rope. He stood alone at the cave entrance. Tell them she's real, he shouted. The claws burst through his chest from behind, and Black Annis dragged him screaming into the cave. Thomas and I ran all the way back to the village. Ian died before we reached his home. Most people refused to believe our story, but the fear in their eyes told the truth. Robbie Campbell's body was found days later in the river. Margaret Murray was never found. Within a year, the village began to empty. Families moved away. No one wanted to live beneath that mountain. Today, nothing remains of a core except broken walls and empty fields. But sometimes, when the wind howls through the hills at night, I hear a voice in my dreams, a whisper crawling out of the darkness, meaning, always mine. And every time I wake up, I swear I can still hear claws scraping against stone. Before I end this video, if you enjoyed this dark legend and want to hear more mysterious and chilling stories like this one, make sure to support our channel. Don't forget to like this video, because your support helps the channel grow and allows us to bring you even more incredible stories from around the world. Also, subscribe to our channel, Kynat786, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming videos filled with mystery, horror, and fascinating legends. Join our growing community of viewers who love exploring the unknown. Stay curious, stay brave, and we'll see you in the next story. And remember, don't miss the next video on Kynat's 786.